Welcome to episode 7 of What About This? The topic for this week is shame. This topic came about because I'm about to be a father in about 6 months or so. Countdown is on and I'm kind of terrified, and that's an understatement. And so I was starting to think about how I wanted to raise my kid, and I just recognized that a lot of how parenting comes about is through shame. And so we use this as a jumping off point to get into where shame comes from and what shame is about and why shame exists. So we hit on some topics, some things like embarrassment and how we feel and how we project that onto other people. How shame is really kind of the opposite of vulnerability and courage, and how we want to look at how we can use vulnerability and courage to sort of help people in their shame. We ultimately kind of get back to this notion that we think shame comes from some of the early Genesis accounts, like Genesis 3, and we talk about that a little bit. But then Ryan takes us back a little bit further and sees how that's not the starting point. The starting point is the first couple chapters of Genesis, and how we need to understand the truth of what those chapters say about how we are, how God looked at us and saw us as good, and then we move forward from there, and how that can help us overcome shame. We also look at how ultimately shame is just about kind of feeling comfortable in your own skin, not having a too high of a self-esteem or too low of a self-esteem, but just sort of a proper understanding of who you are, and that we want to be able to begin to cultivate environments where people can be not who other people want them to be, but who they're supposed to be, and who their true self needs to be. So we're really excited about this episode. So we'd love to hear your feedback. Follow us on all the various social media outlets. So like I think we're at WAT_podcast on Twitter. Follow us and like our page on Facebook. And then also follow Humannequin Media, because they post all of our stuff as well. So again, we'd love to be in conversation with you all. So we hope you enjoy this episode.
Venture into the pop culture cosmos today, where you'll hear our conversations on different topics within the world of movies, TV, video games, comic books, technology, board gaming, and more. You'll also get a taste of some of our other shows within the cosmos as well. So come on and join us each week as we delve into the pop culture cosmos.
Welcome to the pop culture cosmos.
Today we're going to talk about shame, and we're going to talk about it in a couple different ways. The way that I've been thinking about this, because I'm going to be a new dad in October. Amen. And I've been thinking about how I want to parent, and I've been thinking about how we as a society tend to parent. And I'll use one sort of example, and I'm sure everybody's either experienced this or something like this. And I forget where I heard this, so if it's your story, and you heard it from you, I apologize. But so it's a father, and his son is just getting to that age where he's starting to realize that his body is different, right? So he has a penis, right? So and he's starting to explore it, and little boys, they just because they don't know any better, and so the little boy starts to sort of explore, play with himself, and the father slapped the kid's hand away from his private area and yelled no in the kid's face. So just slap no like a dog, right? And I'm just thinking in my head, like, immediate complex. That kid is never going to have a healthy relationship with his penis ever again. Yes, because he's just going to be ashamed of it the rest of his life. So my question is like that, and that's just one example. We do it all the time. Where a lot of our parenting is based in shame, and I'm not blaming parents. I think it's natural. I think there's a lot of stuff that we need to talk about, but that's sort of what I wanted to talk about, is why do we use shame to sort of raise, and again, from my own life, there are various moments I can think back and realize that part of the shame I have as an adult comes from these specific
Well,
moments. And I'm not blaming anything.
And to make a disclaimer is there's no blaming going on as much as explaining going on.
Right, exactly.
And so in that story, the moment that happened, he introduced shame into his son.
Right.
From the most important voice with his mother, right? Mm-hmm. The most important voices in his life, in which he's learning, he's figuring out how to be human. And so in that moment, he introduces shame into his son's life before anything else, because there's going to be enough shame outside of the home. And he just goes, inside of here, be ashamed.
Well, but even, I would say, like, maybe even say it was in the public. So I'm putting myself in the situation. Same in the grocery store. If I have a boy, I don't know yet. But I have a boy, and my little son just drops his pants and starts playing with himself. Like, I might do that because I'm going to be so embarrassed that that's happening in public. My son doesn't. My son wouldn't know any better because he doesn't get the social convention of not playing with yourself in public. But me as the parent, I'm going to be so embarrassed and ashamed myself that I'm going to do that. So I'm not even saying I would be better than that. I'm just saying like that's
where does that come from? We just
got to another step here.
Yeah. So we keep going, and it goes back to not blaming our parents or parenting as much as generations of parents being taught by parents, being taught by parents, and passing down, and this shame culture continues to perpetuate.
Is it a subconscious thing though, or is it something that we actually witness our parents doing, and then we're like, okay, that must be the proper way to do it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think what we're getting at here is that, and parenting is just a simple example. This happens in every social interaction, but it's almost like wounded people wound people, right? So people who have shame, a lot of shame that they're carrying around, which is all of us to an extent, project that shame onto other people. So the parenting style of shame just shows that you've got your own shame things that
exactly.
Out, right?
Well, I'm gonna definitely be poorly quoting Brene Brown this whole podcast.
Perfect.
But to answer Josh's question is, actually, the research shows that we learn shame from our parents. And so as we're learning to be human, growing up from the time we exit the womb, if you will, is when we see our parents shaming themselves. We are learning how to see ourselves the way they see themselves. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so she would say, yes, we do live in a shame-based culture. We all deal with shame, but like Ryan said, it's not just in the home, it's in the classroom. It's on the field. It's everywhere. Everyone's had that teacher that when they say like there's no wrong answers or feel free, and then you say it and they condescendingly rebuttal. You have those teachers. I can't stand those teachers. The teachers that you actually feel safe. You feel free to be vulnerable in the classroom, but you're already, especially, there's a difference between a first grade classroom and a classroom in college.
Right.
And you have all these insecure people walking around because they're so afraid, and there's a fear element here with the shame. I'm afraid in the grocery store to see my kid drop his pants, and what are people going to think of me?
Right.
Once again, we're worried, we're consumed with how will I be presented to the public? What kind of parent has a child who would drop his pants? Every parent does who has a 4-year-old, because they're going woohoo, and they don't care because they're not socially aware.
Right.
And so we have these crazy expectations on children in which they're just the victims. They're the victims in our insecure society. Right? And so you get in the classroom and the kid goes, all right, I'm going to be vulnerable. Meaning I'm going to be, as Brene Brown says, there's no such thing as vulnerability without courage, and in any example of courage, you have to be vulnerable. And she speaks to military, and a courageous act always has the layer of vulnerability. You're exposing yourself. You're putting yourself out there. Think about the shame of going and asking someone to a dance or to coffee or a slice of pie if you grew up in the 50s, right? Man, you're putting yourself out there, and then when you get rejected, you feel less than, though you shouldn't feel less than.
There we go. So where the question is, no one would disagree that shame is present everywhere. even as we talk about this topic, there's like a shame about talking about shame involved, right? So the question is, and Trav, you're getting to it, is like, why? Where did this shame come? If we can trace it back, like, why is our culture so? Why does everyone feel so ashamed all the time about everything that's going on? So I think that's kind of our starting point.
Which is why we're constantly performing, right?
Right. Yes. So those performances are just a symptom of feeling ashamed. Right. So my question is, where does that shame come from?
Yeah. I mean, if we, I guess I'll just go there. Is if we're gonna go from the Christian worldview, we go the shame of hide, right? The secret,
right?
The garden, the fallenness, and ever since then we have been what? Hiding behind our mistakes, hiding behind the lack of what we perceive as perfection, and so perfectionism is illusory. Well, you cannot achieve that, and so even the person that is suffering from perfectionism is, what are they doing? They are trying to build a wall or a facade, and so that you cannot see the truth about who they are because they're afraid of who they are. And she would even argue that we actually are the biggest shamers in our own lives.
I would wonder, even so I think if you're looking at the Genesis account, we would obviously point to the moment where Adam and Eve recognize their nakedness, right? And they start to cover themselves up. But I wonder if you would even push it back one step further to where the deceiver, the serpent, says, "You don't know enough."
Right.
This tree represents what you don't know. And Eve and Adam standing right next to her would be like, I don't know enough. Like,
what is that?
And then it's this pride. It's this idea of, I think there's something that we believe. We start to believe this lie about ourselves, and we take that lie to be true. So it's not even that we.
Okay, so keep going with that. We take that lie to be true. Therefore, what do we do?
So if we're going to believe the lie, we will do anything to circumvent the lie.
Yes.
Right. And so they ate the apple, even though they knew that wasn't going to help. That wasn't really the point, right?
Dr. Eric Mason says this. He said, did they fully understand the gravity of the decision that they made? But that is irrelevant to your point.
Right. Exactly.
Go back to your point. What you were saying about the I don't know.
Right. Is this our perception, like other people's perception of us?
That was the first time. I would say, if you look at it, it's the first time that either Adam or Eve listened to a voice about themselves that was not based in truth.
Not only a voice, a lie.
Right. But that's what I mean.
Not based in truth. Yeah, sorry.
So it's the first time. So before that, we don't have much account in the Genesis account, right? So meaning before that, like what their interaction with God was like. But we can imagine that it was pretty good. It was healthy. It was God was telling them about themselves. Yes. And the minute they listened to someone else tell them who they were, that wasn't based in truth, wasn't the source of truth, then they started to feel less than, to Ryan's point earlier.
Yes.
And shame finds root in less than thinking.
Yes. That's good. So eating the fruit.
Right.
Sewing the fig leaves together.
Right. And then, of course, it proceeds to, then your eyes are open to certain parts of you. Because, again, remember when God says, well, who told you that you were naked? Right? It wasn't, because he knew that they didn't know that they were naked on their own.
Yes.
He said, who told you that?
So going back to raising kids, who told you that? Who caused, I was at a buddy's house, and we saw his son experience like an embarrassment and a shame. And I went, no. You're too little.
Right.
You're too and no one shamed him.
Right.
No one shamed him, and it was just this weird. So then I kind of wonder, I'm like, man, is it just in the air? Like is it just because in fact there was only an encouragement happening.
Right.
And then we get put on, and then it's almost like this subconscious thing happening. And if you want to even go biblical, you fast forward to Jesus, and in whom I am well pleased. You are my beloved, in whom I am well pleased. And he's done nothing in his ministry. And in that moment, Henry Nouwen would say, is at the subconscious level and at the conscious level, we're always asking, who am I? And he says the problem is we constantly answer that question in a wrong way. And he says the greatest spiritual task and he says one of the most difficult things to master is to live out of who we are, that we are enough.
Yeah, you just made an incredible point. So double back real quick. You're saying that Jesus, before he even started his ministry, right? So before he fed all the people, before he healed all the people, before all of that, before he went to the cross, before all of that, the Father looks at him and says, "This is my son with who I am well pleased."
This is my son in which you're enough simply because you exist.
Yes.
Therefore, he has the foundation of who he is, so he doesn't have to pose and to kind of
perform.
C.S. Lewis, right? Is, oh, I'm a good boy, look at me, look at me. And so you see him enter into that, and it's this idea of I know who I am, and if I know who I am, and I'm okay with who I am, you cannot shame me because you cannot take away the fact that I actually matter, that my existence is enough, not my performance. Right. And so all of a sudden, the reason we perform is because we have to prove to ourselves, really, and then therefore, if I can prove it to myself and everyone, and I use you, I project onto you so that I can get to myself and go, yes, you are enough, Travis.
Yes, I love this because this plays into really what it means to be a human. So if you're listening to this and you think the Christian worldview is full of it, or even if you don't agree with the Adam and Eve account, or whatever, everybody understands as humans that there is something inside of us that feels like they're not enough. Feels like they have to achieve a certain amount of things in order to hit this like standard of peace or whatever, which by the way never comes, and so we have to just keep adding and adding and adding. So what we're saying is the Adam and Eve account, it's practical and it's good and makes a lot of sense to say, well, maybe this is our way of explaining when human beings went from being humans that could just be with each other, with the world, with God, with the Creator, with whoever, to oh shoot, I'm not enough, and so I have to do.
So go ahead.
Because I think a lot of people, and especially for those of the listeners out there that may struggle with the Christian faith or just may be outright against it, right?
Yeah. Sure.
What if you look at the Genesis account, the shame does not come from God, right? It comes from some internal dissonance between what you know to be true about yourself and what someone else has told you to be true about yourself.
Yes.
So here's what I think is interesting, is that shame.
So then why do we accept it then, Keith?
Well, but let me just be completely transparent about this from our perspective, from the Christian. The Christian church historically has also not been good at this, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Much of our modern American shame, I will even say, much of our modern American shame comes from the very strict Puritan tradition that started the country, which we can get into later. I just want to say that, like, yes, let's even acknowledge that some of this does come from certain systems of power that were used to control. Let's even acknowledge that. That's not necessarily the point ultimately, because they used a system that was already existing. They used shame in people that people had anyway, right? So we can talk about the abuse of shame at another point,
or shame as a motivator,
or shame as a motivator, whatever. Like, we can talk about this, but that, so if you're sort of yelling at however you're listening to it, if you're yelling at your radio or your
don't
phone,
yell at your computer. That's weird.
If you're doing that, fine. Like we can probably talk about that at some point today. But let's start with this. What I just said, that it is some sort of internal dissonance. Shame is essentially this tension between who you know yourself to be on some deep level and who you've been told you are, even if not directly, even if
it's
not
in the air.
It's to Travis' point, it is in the air a little bit.
And then so the question is, though, even this dissonance about what is true about me, what I know to be true about me versus what you are projecting onto me, or whatever is going on, or I actually look out and I begin to compare myself to somebody who I esteem, and I go, I'm not that, I'm less than that, and you can even project that onto yourself, right? Is it because via the Christian worldview is because we're fallen, and so we fall victim to believing lies about ourselves. And I guess, like, why do we accept it? Is it simply because we're fallen and we're prone to accepting that?
Let me ask you a question, though, because now you've got my mind thinking is how many people are aware that they are ashamed? How many people see their shame as unfulfillment based on society and their friends, what everybody else is doing, and they're like, man, I wish I could be doing that. And then we market off of it. We make self-help books. We have these like philosophy posters, and it's like, how many people are truly aware of their shame?
I'm going to say something that's probably going to be ruffle some feathers out there, maybe even on a side that a different sort of audience that I just addressed a few minutes ago. I think of much of modern capitalism is based on shame.
It absolutely right. It absolutely
right. Meaning nobody's aware of the
right. I don't think anybody's aware. But
so
like
why? Because this. What is it? How do they market?
So like
you don't have
this,
and you're not,
and you're not.
And if you don't have,
you less than.
So Brene Brown says this: is shame promotes the fear of unworthiness of never being enough, nor being worthy of having enough.
That's so good. So you see
fear.
You see the commercial with the lady washing the dishes with the certain soap, and you go, oh, I'm not enough until I have that.
Not only that, it's even worse than that. It's not even worse. It's soap shaming. You know what's even weirder is like in your mind you think, here's what that message is really telling you. Your dishes are dirty.
Yeah. You're dirty.
Right. Which some people are like, if my dishes are dirty, I am dirty. I am not as good. So it's like, okay, dirty dishes. Like, who cares?
So now you see this. Now you see this in parenting even, and you go, it's the embarrassed parent, the parent that is explaining their wild child or their crazy. And what we do is, and I hate this, and I am a father now. So our kids are gonna hang out, man.
Yeah.
And so I think about this is I cannot stand, and I understand, but I cannot stand when it's like, oh, this is Johnny. He's my wild one. Yeah. You just named him.
Right.
This is Susie. She's my shy one.
She's timid.
She's rambunctious, and you're like.
So here's what I would say.
I thought she was Susie.
Right.
Which is it?
So here's what I would find interesting about this, because this is where you do get into some really interesting territory with parenting, especially, which is kind of where we started. Is how do you get to know your kid and get to know the personality and ins and outs and the subtleties and all that without naming them and sort of boxing them in? Because naturally you're going to notice, this kid, my kid, Susie is a little shy. Yeah. I'm not saying you introduce her as like the shy one, but how do you do that? Because there is going to be some, and I think this is where it becomes much more difficult as a parent, because and this is why I don't want to blame parents, or because again, I'm just going to say this, I'll say it, and it's going to be on the record, and people can play this back to me 20 years from now when my kid's a wreck. Hopefully not. But
you heard it here
I'm going to make mistakes.
Absolutely.
My kid will have some sort of shame, probably as a direct result of something I do.
Yes.
Right? So let's just say that.
Right.
But how do you sort of get to know your kid and talk to your child about like who they are without introducing these very specific things? Because I'll tell you this. Last weekend we were at a men's retreat, and I was sharing my story, and a lot of my identity growing up was in being the smart one.
So let's talk about that, right? Yeah. So what you were saying is it's not necessarily a negative description as much as a positive description, and so you go, little Johnny's smart, little Susie's smart, and they go, I'm smart, I have to live up to smart.
Right.
And so what ends up happening is I hate this. I hear parents, he's better than that, and I go, maybe he's not.
And that's okay.
Right. And so when you learn here's my whole deal is, even in marriages, you gotta commit to getting a doctorate in your spouse, right? And so we have a lack of interested humans on this planet, and in a digital age, in an age of media, we are losing our spirit and losing our soul. And Sherry Turkle speaks about this a lot, social psychologist, I believe, in that what media, what technology has actually done is the converse of what it set out to do, is to free us up to be creative and to think, and it's killing our creativity. Right. And it's also killing our interest in others. Right. And then you have the Western individualistic kind of narrative that it's you, like, right, Keith, you talk about how the literature even and everything around it is you've become the hero in your own story. Right. So I'm very disinterested in people now because of that. Now I got to take ownership. And you're saying, how does a parent take ownership of knowing, I know this, I know I'm going to screw my kid up on some regard, but that shouldn't stop us from going, I'm not going to, I'm going to do everything that I can.
Right.
And so instead of me going, well, someone's going to play football, and I go, but he can't throw, catch or run.
He's 5'2".
Yeah.
Like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, and
Sorry,
you go,
Travis.
yeah, I know, man. Working on it. I'm a late bloomer. And I go, what if he's good at chess? That's good.
Right.
And because we're not interested in others,
Right.
we're only interested in ourselves. What ends up happening is you have parents that are disinterested in their kids because they like, reading versus the pigskin, And you go, whoa. That's a problem.
Right.
Because you can't have a bunch of CEOs. So stop trying to make your kids something that they don't need to be.
Right.
Start investing in the person that they are and learn who they are, and then you encourage.
Right.
And then sometimes you're going to have to encourage and
One
push
way,
and
right.
put your foot down, but not shame them into
Right.
it and say, if you don't, how many families out there have the kid that we're like, well, we expect that from them.
But we
I
don't expect it from the
other one
younger
because
sibling.
he's never
right.
go, no, he's just too smart that he never got good grades because he saw his older sibling get reamed for
Right.
not reaching their goals, and you go, Steve is good too, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's smart too. He could get the grades. He just learned the system,
Right.
and so now he doesn't have to live up to your outlandish expectations.
Not only this, and this is something that I've talked about with, I think, each of the guys here on different occasions about, because again, I'm in higher education, and I think the higher education system is broken, to put it lightly. So a lot of it, so we're pigeonholing these kids. I have kids regularly in my class that don't need to be in my class. And not because they're not smart enough to pass my class.
Yeah.
The talent that they have is not in analyzing the Pilgrim's Progress.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
Right?
Good.
So
Yes.
why am I and this is even something I've had to question myself, like, why am I participating in a system that I'm going to say does detriment to some of these students because they are forced to be in a system that doesn't produce excellence in them, right? They're forced to fit into this certain structure that they don't thrive in.
Mm-hmm.
And so they feel bad about themselves. Right? So they feel bad they can't pass my class or they don't do well in my class.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to take them aside and say, it's fine. Like, you are not less to me because you don't do well in my class.
Well, this gets back to us learning what we're good at and what we're not good at,
Right.
and that doesn't make me less of a person, and it actually frees me up to be who I am.
Right.
And you're tapping into something great, and you're talking about you're actually really, and I just read this book, Most Likely to Succeed. And it talks about the history of education,
Right.
and it's not so much that even the way education is today. And I know you're walking the fine line, but is we haven't caught up to what's happening in culture and society as a whole.
Right.
And so our education system was once built for a time that it was important, and now we're trying to play catch up. Yeah. And we can get into the big business of it, but aside from that, let's just go at it. It's not as effective because of where culture, society is taking us via technology and whatever. And so we're behind in creating and cultivating environments for our children to be capable of creativity. And I
don't want to get into too much because I hope to do a future episode
We'll do a whole one
on
on that.
higher on education
absolutely.
systems and all that. So I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I do think it's interesting that it doesn't, because I think I was thinking about this originally in terms of parenting, especially young kids, but it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop when they hit 10 or 5 or 15.
Yeah.
Like, even if I'm not the one doing it, it's still a system that they have to do. It's still a thing they have to deal with, this idea of shame and being, so anyway. So this, I wanted to go back to a point, your point, you were talking about lack of interested people.
Yeah, well, I think when we get into it I see this all the time working with the high schoolers, is the comparison trap, right? We're constantly comparing ourselves, and whether we're being compared to our siblings, maybe, right? Let's just we'll attack everything. Yeah. You're being compared to your classmates, and you're like, dude, I'm just not good at math.
Right.
And so in our society, we go, oh man, and then you have this one kid, right? I remember I was dating someone who had a friend who just never got less than an A. Just book smart. Found out I was a kinesiology major and said, "Oh, he's gonna be a psychic." And I said, "Oh my gosh, oh my gosh." So what? Even getting into education, Keith just took off his glasses, and so yes, I know. I took my invisible ones off too. I was like, "Yo, what?" And so I went, wait, who's smart here? Right? Because you learn textbook, or so we're different people.
Yeah,
right.
And it's letting that book smart person know that they're not so great at other things, and that's okay.
But in that realm, they look down on people because they can't get straight A's. And so this is part
But
of
the reason that they're looking down on people is because they're scared to death because they know that they're not good at that other stuff. So
Yes.
they're
It's
they're
a defense
ashamed
mechanism
of
against
that.
it.
It's a defense mechanism. So if we could get to the point, to Keith's point, where that person that shouldn't be reading Pilgrim's Progress with him can know that that person's really good at lots of other things that Keith isn't good at.
Right.
Why? Which is why he's leading this lecture on Pilgrim's Progress.
Right.
And
Exactly.
it doesn't make either of you better than the other. It's just who you are. So be that.
Right.
Yes.
Then I feel like the shame would start to we'd be able to start to strip back these layers of shame and start to become who we.
So
who we are.
so shame obviously it promotes a fear of never being enough, right? Is to quote Brené Brown. Shame promotes a fear of never being enough.
I think it's a byproduct of not knowing that you're ever enough.
Well, absolutely, but the shame in and of itself is her argument is what promotes a fear.
Right.
It promotes the fear.
The feeling of
so
it.
we
or
have
the feeling.
this.
Right.
It's not
It's not.
helping
It,
at all.
Well,
I see what you're
here's
saying.
what I get at is I go. Ever since a child is born, he constantly, and don't get offended because I'm going to use the father figure, but it's look daddy, look daddy, look daddy, look daddy,
Right.
and we continue to say look daddy, look daddy, look daddy. It's a concept, right?
Right. Yeah.
We're doing it in our careers, and we do it in our relationships. Look, babe. Look, sweetie. Look what I did. Look, coworker. Look, boss. Look, society. Look, neighbor. I got the boat. Look, Steve. Come over. And we want to be because we want to be on top, and we want to be more than.
On another level, though, do you think the people that they're saying, "Hey, look, daddy, look, boss," that the people they're saying that to want that? They're like,
Want what?
I think
they're like, yes,
here's-
this guy wants my
here's,
approval. So
here's why I.
Which
think,
is another form.
But
of
I would
it.
say here's why I think that's the case because so you do a good job. You want your boss to just tell you you did a good job. The boss wants to have that because he wants to be able to say to use like a weird term, my bosshood instead of my personhood. My bosshood is important because if I'm not the boss, then I'm not as good. So my position has to mean something. So I need my underlings, I need my subordinates to look to me for approval because if they don't, then it's an empty system.
That's good.
Right?
Yeah.
So
if
both pieces of the puzzle
Right.
are rooted in shame.
Right.
And that's what's
Absolutely,
causing
yeah.
this.
Which is a great question, right? Josh is yes.
Right.
So it's a vicious cycle.
Yes.
And even I have kids breaking down over they feel like if they don't want to go to the next level of sports
Right.
that they're less than because there has been coaches who are like, well, you don't want to go D1, bro. And you're like, no, I just want to play high school. Is that okay just because you didn't make it?
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
And so then you have parents living through their children,
Right.
and they're obsessed with something. And it goes back to even these things about like, dude, and kids feel when their parent's not fired up about what they're doing. And I would say, why aren't you fired about what your kid's doing? Because you're just fired up about your kid.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this fear of that shame promotes fear. And so she gets into vulnerability, and she says vulnerability is neither good or bad, but I believe if I'm remembering right, it is the means through which we're able to put ourselves out there and be exposed to criticism and to failure.
Right.
And so I make myself vulnerable. It's not a vulnerability, but see, vulnerability is defined in our society as weakness.
Right.
And it's not a good or a bad thing. It's a thing.
Right.
Yeah.
It's neutral.
Yeah.
It's a thing that allows you to feel everything,
Right.
to experience everything in
Yeah.
its fullness, and live this wholehearted living. I think is, to borrow her term again, is this shout out to Brené Brown is being able to accept failure and not attach it to your identity. Tim Keller's book on freedom of self-forgetfulness is the best book ever. And so, and I need to read it every so often to remind myself that I'm both enough and that I'm super egocentric. and going, the reason I have an ego and I need to keep feeling the ego, as he borrows from the scriptures of Paul, is the reason I need to fill my ego is because it's empty, or my ego is filled up, or it's overinflated.
It's like a balloon.
And Paul says it needs to be filled up by Jesus.
Right.
So for the Christian audience, or even, but is if it's filled up by anything that can be taken away from you,
Right.
it's crushing, and there's this beautiful quote by Madonna, and Keller goes, you guys think that she's this narcissistic nut. And he goes, no, she just knows herself better than you.
She talked about how she's never going to be enough. She's realized through all of her accomplishments, through all of her things, that it's never going to be enough. And Keller goes, you look at that and you go, gosh, are you kidding me? And he's making the point that, no, she's just way more self-aware than the rest of us, because that's the exact same place that the rest of us are trying to get to. She just had enough life experience to get there sooner than a lot of people are able to get
meditation.
there. Yeah.
But she does. She says she basically she fills the cupboard up every night, right? She goes and she has this epic performance. And you have 20 million people screaming your name and worshiping you. Yeah. And the next day, you have to go do it again because you need the applause. Because you don't believe you're enough. And right there, what's she doing? She's shaming herself.
Right.
You see? And so this is her point, there's a constant shame from the outside that you accept, and then you begin to be your number one shamer.
Yeah. It's weird too, because when we become aware of this, it's almost already too late for us to make a change, because like you guys said, it all starts back as where our parents start raising us. It's so hard as an adult to change your mindset. You can read these books, you can watch videos of people saying, hey, do this, but it's so difficult to turn that off.
So let's talk about this a little bit.
That's what one person calls the inner voices that we have from a child.
Right. Okay. So how do we start to change that narrative that we've believed about ourselves for 20, 30, 40, 50, however many years? How do we, once we see it, and if you're listening to this, maybe for the first time, you're going, oh,
that's why I do that.
that's why I do that. What do we do with shame? Now that we can identify it, now that we can see it, how do we start to get rid of it?
So I'll just set it off as simple as this is, and I totally agree with this, is to understand it, and then to articulate or verbalize, and that is what Brené Brown says is the key to undoing or to getting rid of the shame. Because you go, so many people know my story, but I was abandoned at 6 months old by my father, and thank God for mothers out there who are consistent, right, and stick around. And so what I didn't realize, we don't, like Josh said, we don't realize these things. They just become a part of who we are.
Right.
Yeah. And so I realized around the age 21, and it's funny because my mom would say, like, you're such a happy kid. And I was like, what happened? And what was that? It was the anger was a mask for her.
Right.
And so I grew up feeling never enough, because there's something I think within both a mother and a father, and in my personal research, so don't take this out, don't go freak out about this. In my personal research, there's something about a father in a daughter and a son's life that, man, just does something. The same way mothers have this incredible thing about them in different stages of life that a father cannot do.
Right.
And so this is something I think that a man just has an innate quality. And so that was an inner voice, dude, you're not enough. And I didn't have that guy spurring me on. I had a mom doing it, but I didn't have that in and of itself. And I finally figured this out in my early 20s. I go, oh. And then I started to see, I project onto you, I make you in my relationships. So I'm like, do you love me? Am I enough? And it really boils in up. But so Ryan, you're going, so how do we get around this? Well, I had to finally realize I did have a daddy issue. Whereas, you know what I used to say growing up? I don't need a dad. Everybody needs a dad.
Right.
So why did I say that?
Yeah. Right.
Why did I say my mom is like a mom and a dad, which is actually weird and impossible? My mom is not like a mom and a dad. She's like a mom, without a husband to help raise me. Yeah. And so I had to be honest about that pain, which we live in a society we're not good about that, and that's a vulnerable element in my life that I had to come to this place of vulnerability where I had to say, I wish I had a dad.
So here's, one of the ways, and again, so remember earlier when I said those people who are anti-Christian, this might be where you might latch onto something, but I want you to hang on with us and not turn off after I say this and say, we won. Because I think there's something in some of the way the Christian church today approaches one of the theological concepts of original sin. Because there's a way to teach that produces more shame, right?
Yes.
Because essentially what the theology of the doctrine of original sin essentially says, all humans are bad,
yes.
right? Immediately we can think, yeah, we know where shame can come from. So my question isn't we need to I'm not saying we need to throw that out. My question is, how does the church teach us about ourselves? Because there is a real truth there, that there is something about we fall short of our own expectations all the time, right? Or we fall short. So there's a real truth about humanity there. But how do we do that without producing this deep-seated shame?
And getting rid of the fact that, yes, we are fallen.
Right.
And I'm going to throw it to Ryan because we talk about this all the time. And we talk about...
I was setting this up on a tee for Ryan.
Yeah.
Honestly,
I am too, and I'm not saying it. I'm just like, please get into it.
Because Ryan, and I'll just be honest, I've heard you talk about this, and it's actually helped me a lot over my last 2 years of the journey.
Based on how do we get out of shame, right?
Yeah, and it's all just me trying to deal with my own stuff, right? But it is something I'm passionate about, and I think as a starting point, we need to start the story from the beginning, right? So, Josh, you're a Harry Potter fan, right? If you would have picked up Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone and skipped the first chapter and the second chapter about the boy who lived, and then just jumped straight into the story, you wouldn't be able to make a whole lot of sense about who.
And the whole resolution wouldn't have meant as much had I not read those two chapters.
Right, and so I think sometimes we approach the Bible the same way, where in Genesis chapter 3, Adam and Eve take the fruit and they eat it, and they sin, and that's where the guilt and the shame enter in, and that's where we would say we've inherited Adam's sin, original sin, which I agree with.
Well, where does the Bible start?
We have inherited this sin, and the shame, the guilt is everywhere. However, if you go back to the first chapter and the second chapter and you read it, it's about a God who creates this incredible universe and this world, and he calls it good, and then he creates the animals and he blesses them, and he tells them to be fruitful and multiply, and he calls them good. And then he creates human beings in his image. This is Genesis 1, 26, 27, 28. It says, hey, go be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, subdue it, have dominion over it. And he goes, this is good. In fact, he goes, this is really, really good.
Yes.
So before the fall, before shame entered the picture, before sin came, before everything broke, God looks down on us and he goes, I didn't mess up.
Yes.
Right? This is good. So I would say that underneath all the layers of sin and brokenness and shame that even comes with birth, we have to get back to understanding that humans are actually good. Humans are good. Now this rocks the boat in theological circles. So go ahead.
So what I was going to say is I think that's where Keller's book Freedom of Self-Forgiveness is actually brilliant, because what he's saying is you have to forget yourself.
Yes.
But in an essence, and I haven't read it, so tell me if I'm off, but in essence, underneath that, you have to not just forget yourself, but at the same time, you have to remember a deeper self.
So,
right? You have to remember that. You have to remember the pre-fallen relationship with God, right? Now, it doesn't mean you throw out this idea that we do exist in a broken world. You say like, oh, there is a part of me that was deeper than my shame, that is truer than my shame, that connects with God, right?
Well, in the book he's talking about the condition of the human ego,
right?
And he basically says this is that you can't hurt my feelings. He says you hurt my ego,
right?
And he says we live in a society that basically promotes high self-esteem,
right?
But high self-esteem is actually, over the course of humanity, is mainly the root of all evil, is to esteem oneself. And so he says low self-esteem can promote that as well.
I would say it's actually the same thing as low self-esteem in some sense.
Yes.
It's not the exact, but like...
what he's saying is that low self-esteem is actually better almost than high self-esteem. Mm-hmm. But we've grown up in the last 30 years where a mom drives down the street with, my son's on the honor roll, right? And 30, 40 years ago, people were like, that lady's nuts.
Right.
Because that's not healthy.
Right.
And so now what happens is he said, okay, you do have an ego, that's true. It needs to be filled up. Right. And so he says, Paul is saying, I don't care what you think about me.
Right.
but I also really don't care what I think about
Right.
me. And I take that a step further and I say, no. At the end of the day, it's only I care what I think about me, because if I didn't care what I think about me, I wouldn't care what you think about me. And so at the end of the day, it's me focused on myself. Whether that, if you want to argue with me or not, is irrelevant. I'm just saying I take it a step further and say, at the core of it is I'm so concerned. And what he's saying is, he's saying more so you do have an ego. It needs to be filled up with Jesus.
Right.
So there's no room for me to attach what you think about me or what I think about my failures or successes, and make that my identity. Rather, my identity is in I am well pleased. You are my son in whom I am well pleased. So if
you have to forget the self that is defined by other people.
Exactly.
And you have to remember the self that is defined by Christ in this case.
This is exactly his point. And so I'm a Thomas Merton and Henry Nouwen junkie. And I think it's Thomas Merton who coined these phrases, which is what Ryan and you were talking about, is the true self versus the false self.
Right.
And our false self leads us to performing.
Right.
And all we're doing when we're performing is what we're trying to do is we're trying to mask the shame that we bestowed upon ourselves, or that was bestowed upon us.
And that's why I think high self-esteem is actually just low self-esteem masked in something else, because this projection of I love, and there are maybe people who genuinely be like, I see myself as this huge, this big, this grand, this important person. I think that's just a mask to say I really feel terrible about myself, but I'm going to show you that I feel better about myself.
Yeah. I think you're kind of hitting it on the head. Is it's kind of one and the same, right? But there is a slight difference.
Right.
The difference is Hitler esteemed himself,
right?
Because he went, I deserve. So the guy who beats his wife probably has high self-esteem. We go, no, there's no way. And you're like, no. He esteems himself in high regard. He holds himself in high regard.
But I would say, so I agree with you, because I would say that high and low self-esteem are both
just one
the false self.
Right.
Yes. Oh,
that's
okay.
What I would
yeah,
say.
absolutely.
So
that's genius. Yeah.
So then to get back to Chad's point, 10 minutes ago, weird that the four of us would get on rabbit trails. The answer then to how do you get rid of the false self, or how do you start to take that shame away, I think, is doing exactly what we're doing, is having conversations and having dialogue and being open and honest about things, because you say it and then you go, oh, they're still here. They're still listening to me. There's this lie underneath shame that says never talk about it. That shame is wrong, and so push it down. And so it's this never-ending cycle that just keeps it down beneath the surface. How do you wage war on that? You talk about it.
Right.
And I think you talk about it in the light of truth, and we've been kind of addressing both audiences or whatever, and is there absolute truth, whatever. But at the end of the day, let's just, for the sake of going, there is truth about who we are and that we're enough. Right? And to borrow Keller's phrases, our deepest desire is to be fully known and fully loved. Yeah. And so our fear comes in when we go, if they know me, they won't accept me.
Right.
They won't love me. They won't want to spend time with me. And I've learned in my own life and in the life of others, I've watched it, is the opposite is true. Mm-hmm. And when I make myself vulnerable in my marriage, my wife draws near to me. Right. With friends, they go, whoa, or you go, it's an opportunity for two guys to go, you too? Yeah. And then all of a sudden we have this, right? Because humans are shaped and wired for connectivity. Yeah. And that's what we desire, even on the spectrum of these extroverted, introverted kind of personalities. Mm-hmm. And we have this tendency, you and I were talking about this, Keith, is to isolate. Right. And I think even that is that could be many different things, but at the end of the day is, Ryan, you're right, is we have to create circles, discussions to be able to talk about this and to create environments and cultivate those environments for people to be vulnerable about who they are, about what they're dealing with.
Well, and I'll say, and this is just a little bit of the behind the scenes for those of you out there. It's so this whole project started, this whole idea started years ago, and I'll speak for myself, and you guys can chime in, but growing up, I would always ask these strange questions or make these strange statements, and I would just get stares back at me. People would just be like, what are you talking about, Keith? And then slowly, and I found something, and then at about 4 or 5 years ago, about 4 years ago, I started chatting with the 4 guys right here. And a light bulb clicked where I'd ask a question and instead of getting a stare back, I would get this look of it, like with me and Travis. Like I'd ask a question, Travis would be like, "I'm glad you asked that question. I've been thinking about this for years." So it started to click, and I was like, "Oh, it's fine to ask these sorts of questions because that's just who I am, and it's fine to have these sorts of discussions because that's just who I am." And I found a community where that's, I can be vulnerable and be promoted. So but it wasn't that I have to exist in this community, right? Yeah. I do, because that's a whole other discussion. But I can still ask these questions.
Get the blank stare.
And get the blank stares, because now I realize, it's weird to ask that question, and I'm okay with that. But that's just part of who I am. So for me, it's a matter of this is what I've come to understand, is this idea of humbleness is not a lower understanding of yourself than so humbleness is not it. When you need to be humbled, it's not you need to think less of yourself. Maybe you need to think less of yourself than you have been thinking of yourself, but it's not like I need to think of myself as worse than I am. No. And I definitely need to not think of myself as better than I am. I need to have a proper understanding of who I am.
Well, and I would even say it's not weird to ask the questions. It's weird to think it's weird to ask the questions.
Right. And so right.
If you think it's weird, you're weird.
And I just need to realize that that's just who I am. I need to be okay with that's just who I am, right? I have this, so it's a proper understanding of self. It's not good, it's not bad, it just is.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Right, it's just, it's a thing. It's like, it's just the thing, right? That's what I've had to come, and I've gone through a lot of things and over the last couple of years where I've had to come to that realization is that I've had to realize that when people say they're being humble, they're really projecting their false self again.
Well, we won't get into it, but you can't be humble.
Right.
Humble's an action.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. Like when people say like, "Oh, I'm just being humble" and all that, which is ridiculous. I understand.
Yeah. Well, it's when you ask this prominent athlete in the area, and you say, "Hey, like, are you good at your sport?" And they close up.
Right.
And they don't tell you yes, and I go, "You're not being humble."
Right.
A truly humble person, is someone who is completely interested in others,
right?
But also that can say, I'm a really good. I'm going here. I'm being looked at, and that's not arrogant to say the truth. We think the truth is somehow this arrogant thing.
And one of the things, actually, this is a sort of an aside, but one of the things that I really had to realize, I forget who said this to me, but I think it took years for me to really have it sink in. When I was a kid and through most of my life, I was terrible at taking compliments. It would make me uncomfortable, and I would try to be like, it's not that big a deal. And then someone said, being bad at taking compliments is a form of arrogance. Yes. And I was like, oh crap, that sucks.
Yeah, and so I've had to, don't know your smart.
Right. So I've had to come to realize that here's the way when someone gives you a compliment, just say thank you. That's it. Just say thank you. Right. They're trying to do something nice to you. They're not waiting for you to say, "Oh, I'm so good," so they can get. It's not a gotcha moment. They're offering you. They're being vulnerable. To your point, they're extending a hand, and by saying something like, "Oh, it wasn't that big a deal," you're slapping their hand down.
Man, you can almost say thank you and you're welcome.
Because Keith, you are smart, and so you say thank you, great. But also, I am smart, and so I'm gonna go be smart.
Right.
Yeah.
Why can't the author?
I'm gonna use what God's given me, or whatever He's given me, and I'm gonna go and I'm gonna use it.
But what is if you guys write a book, right? Like Josh and Ryan, you guys write a lot, and if someone gets a hold of anything you written and it's like, dude, that was so awesome. There's almost this like humility in being like, oh, you're welcome. like I know that you're like, that sounds arrogant, but the joke there is kind of like, so the author who writes this #1 best-selling book is like, thank you. What do you say when someone says thank you? You're welcome.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Right.
And they give you a compliment, and there's almost a sense in like, thank you for existing. You're like, you're welcome. Whatever. I'm being cheeky, but you're going. But at the end of the day, it's like, dude,
and that's hard. But that's hard for us.
Why? Because it's appreciation of others.
But to bring this back to where we started, it's the same thing as the parent slapping the little boy's hand away. It's not about the boy. No. It's about you. Right? So they're coming out and they're saying thank you. I'm extending a vulnerable moment to you. And you're literally slapping the hand away saying no.
Don't
do that.
And you shame them.
And because you're not secure in yourself.
They feel uncomfortable and
Right.
awkward, and then you bestow you shame them. And you know what's funny is I got this. So when people, sometimes I dress well, sometimes, and so if I get a compliment, thank you.
Hey, you're very fashionable. Thank you for all your.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome. And so someone goes like this, goes, "Oh, those are dope," or "Oh, that's a dope shirt," or whatever. I go, right.
Right.
Like, I'm agreeing with you. Like, I know that's why I'm wearing it.
They expect you to be uncomfortable with it, though. They don't expect you to say...
But you know what they expect me to say
you're welcome.
is thank you. I said, you were complimenting the shirt to me. Are you complimenting my, like, sense of fashion? So then say, dude, you have really good style. Thank you. But they're like, dude, that's a sick shirt. I go, I know, right? And all of a sudden, I'm a jerk, and I'm arrogant, and I'm cocky. Right. And I go, what? That's what I said when I saw it on the rack.
Right.
That's why I got it. And all of a sudden, so it's this weird perversion... And to your point of like getting a compliment, dude, and not saying thank you, is that person in turn, you're shaming them.
Right.
And then they're going like, man, I thought I was doing something normal, right, and good because I appreciate. And so now it gets into, I just want to say this is, because we're so focused on self, we don't appreciate everybody else's beauty, and I'm not talking about just physical. I'm talking, but even physical, we don't appreciate it.
Right.
And because we live in a culture in which we are envious and we're constantly jealous of others, we can't appreciate the person. And that is to the point of Keller's book, is he said, you get to a place and you're a person who has forgotten themselves. They go, I'm glad it was done.
Right.
They go, I didn't have to write the book. I didn't have to hit the home run.
Yeah.
You can beat me on the court, and I'm glad you did it.
Right.
Because it had to be done. Someone had to win, and I can now look at the winner and go, bravo.
So good,
because what they're saying to you is like, you've brought some sort of joy to my life.
Yes.
And if you say anything other than thank you, if you say like, it wasn't that big a deal, you're telling them their joy wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah.
We'll talk about
that's terrible.
But talk about the false self living with the, okay, and this is and who's helped me? I think, and I don't know if this is what he was saying, but author John Mark Comer says, I think it was him. He says, this false self, when people are like, oh man, that was great. It's like, just all glory to God. You're like, well, yes, but God didn't do it.
Right.
Like he did it, but he used you.
Right.
Yeah.
And therefore you can say thank you.
Yes.
Because he called you to do it, because he called your co-heirs. He's saying, I want you to create and cultivate to this point. And he's going, hey, stop pretending and say, like, oh really? I didn't see, God didn't give the sermon.
Man.
Right.
He gave you the gift. Yes, so cool.
Right. So when Genesis 3 is the starting point, then that shame is what enters into the picture, and we go, well, I had to be God because I'm just a piece of garbage or whatever. But when Genesis 1 is the starting point, then we go, oh, God created me, and I'm going to use the gifts that God gave me to do something in this world. And guess what? That makes even God, that gives more glory to God than us going, well, I'm nothing. Right? And so it all comes back to understanding the beginning of the story.
Let's talk for a moment. Let's talk about the white elephant that is society and culture. So I've heard, like, I remember this moment specifically when I was 16. I became aware of, like, shame, my mom's shame towards me, I guess. Sorry, Mom, if you're listening to this, but the Christmas card, okay? My brothers and sisters, like, you know how they like to have those big, what's everyone up to? My brother and sister had, like, these paragraphs, hey, so-and-so's graduating, so-and-so's going through this. And for me, there's one sentence. One sentence. And I was like, dude, I think my mom's ashamed of me, because she was raised on, like, the Leave It to Beaver type happy days. Like, that was the culture she was
So explaining right now, not blaming. But so she inherited the Leave It to Beaver.
She inherited that.
Right.
She was taught that
idea. So now we fast forward today, and us waking up from shame is like coming out of the Matrix. We got all pulling all the tubes out, and then. But it goes back to like objective beauty. Why can't they see what I see? Like, how am I going to make myself vulnerable and put myself out there without them knowing where I'm coming from?
Fantastic.
Yes.
And so we have, like, even today's society's definition of acceptance is not real. It's like, I'm accepting you because it makes me feel better as a human being about whatever it is you want.
We're constantly rejecting and accepting things in order. So if I reject something, what I'm doing is I'm trying to find my identity in it. If I'm about that, I'm not. And when I say I'm not about that, it's also what it's doing is I'm saying that's part of who I am. Right. And so we're compelled by things, or we're repelled by things. And I would even say there's an element of no, that's, the jealousy factor is you are compelled by it, but you're jealous, so you can't be compelled by it, instead of the appreciation thing and understanding like the complexity of each kid.
Yeah.
That like you didn't have 3 of the same, and even if you had triplets, they ain't the same.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're constantly absorbing what society wants from us. So even if we're aware of this, we tend to get buried beneath what everybody else is thinking or projecting onto us.
Yeah.
And I think that's why shame is the starting point to transformation. Identifying shame, looking at shame, seeing shame, calling shame what it is. It's like a car. If our soul's like a dirty car, that has just a bunch of dirt on the outside and water everywhere.
Yes.
Identifying shame is like the car wash, right? Where there's a whole bunch of stuff inside of it that still needs to be like sifted through and worked on. But when we see the shame, we call it what it is, and it's like we get this like nice car wash for our car, so that we can at least see inside and see like what's down there and what's going on.
You just made me think about with your car illustration is white. Why do people buy white cars? Because they don't look as dirty.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like we're like these white cars, and they're like, and then you, like you said, you take it to the wash and you go, oh, there was a film.
But you know what? Where my mind took me to is like, why do people write "wash me" on those cars as if they're shaming the car that it's dirty?
That's
like
shame.
You're like
shame tactics, guys.
You're like, I know my car is dirty. You don't need to write "wash me" on it.
Because there is. Because
Right,
if you're
that's what I'm
40
saying.
years old and up,
Right.
if you don't have your
No,
car
but
is
I-
not clean,
but I just
you
think-
are not.
I just think that's
you're not a whole person.
I just think that's
Right.
a funny impulse. And it's what
It
we've been
is.
talking about. It's a funny impulse for like the 16-year-old kid because he thinks it's funny, which is the worst form of humor.
But why would they
Like,
even do this? Because the
wash me.
45-year-old
Right.
No, I understand it. I just
Why-
but it's
let's take it a step further.
It's part of the same system.
Let's take it a step further.
Absolutely.
Why do you feel super uncomfortable? I'm not saying us. I don't think the four of us fall into this category. But why do a lot of people feel so ashamed when somebody comes over to their house and it's not clean, spotless? What do you say? Don't go in that room. Do not go in.
We pretend to be something we're not in the moment.
It's just like, how is there a better picture of just our souls?
Absolutely. Yes.
That is. Don't go there.
That is.
Don't go there. Don't look at that part.
Yes.
Let's not talk about.
Because,
don't do that podcast.
But going back to Travis's point, because there's a vulnerability in inviting, not even just having someone stop by your house, but inviting someone over when your house is a mess.
Yeah.
There's a certain amount of courage and vulnerability.
Who are you inviting them
Come
into?
in because you're to your real, like, this is what it looks
yourself.
like. This is what this looks like.
This is what Tuesday
every
looks like.
day, right? This is what this and there's, so you go into someone's house, and this happens all the time. You go into someone's house and they're like, I apologize for the mess, and it doesn't matter how messy it is, they'll always apologize for the mess because it's a weird.
And you go,
like,
you're not that sorry, you didn't clean it up.
Right, but even then,
So I don't care.
But what I want to try to do, and it's a genuine feeling of mine, but I also think it's important in the discussion. Like, you know what? It's fine. Like, it's fine.
Oh, I would say that.
It's all good.
Yeah, but I know, and that's like sort of the polite, like, that's the, I'm sorry it's messy, oh, it's fine, that's the polite sort of social contract. But I'm saying there needs to be genuine expression in that. Like,
That's fine.
It's funny too that you mentioned
I
that.
almost want to say, like, I'm glad it's messy.
Yeah.
Good, I'm glad.
Hey, you know what? I was right.
Dude, it's funny you mentioned that because like when I take people in my car's messy most of the time, and I'm always like,
talk to you about that.
always
I mean,
like-
there needs to be some, like, accountability on this.
but I'm like, my car's messy, I would clean it, but I don't care. And then they look at me with like this shame. They're like, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Yes.
Like,
You should care. You'd be like,
Yeah.
why?
You should care that you care, bro.
Right.
yeah, right?
Like, you have
And
other things to do.
I think what we're saying is, aren't there some more important things in this world that we should actually care about?
For sure.
Right? Other than making sure every last piece of dust is off of.
Well,
the
dude,
counter.
we have this.
And if it really bothers you that much, offer to help them clean it.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Well, and let's go back to
Yeah.
just
Just saying, if it really bothers you.
come over Tuesdays.
Yeah.
Is my one of my cousins, he's very artistic. I mean, he's an insane artist and great musician, and me, him and my brother shared a room for years through college. And I'm not the cleanest guy, but I'm pretty tidy. And then it kind of goes down I would say then my brother, then him, and whatever. And My cousin can function with guitar strings at the edge of his pillow.
Right.
Yeah.
And CDs at the foot of his bed.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I'm not talking about like stacks and a guitar laying next to him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not kidding.
Right. No.
And I would go, what? And we have these jokes about. We always reflect
Right.
on our old, and we kind of like make fun of each other about things. And I just go, he's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Why does that bother me?
Yeah.
Because I didn't sleep in his bed with him.
Right.
We were 20 in our
That's a whole
20s.
other discussion.
Yeah, that's fine.
The heat went out one night.
Yeah, I was tired. I thought it was my bed. And so in that is, why do I care? Now, if he put his guitar strings on my bed, yes, I care now. But he didn't, and it's fine, and he functions well.
Right.
He's fine. He's an incredible guy, and who cares? But it goes back to, why are we so obsessed with everyone trying to be like, this is what we do in relationships.
Right.
Right. And this is what you guys were talking about something earlier. I just wanted to kind of go back a little bit as to what is going on, and what is going on in our humanity. And Keller talks about this in The Meaning of Marriage is, when you get married with someone, you're really signing up to partner with God to create and to cultivate an environment for that person to become who God created them to be, not who you want them to be, which is usually just yourself.
Yes. And
N.T. Wright brings up, there's these moments where you get a glimpse of who they were really created to be, and quote unquote who we will be as our future selves.
So let's even then let's kind of put a bow on this then, because if we're going to take that model, and that's a brilliant illustration for marriage, but it's a perfect illustration for parenting. Your responsibility as a parent, and again, please hear me, I am not a parent yet, and I will not be a perfect one. But if that's the call is to create an environment and cultivate an environment where your kid is not who you want them to be, which is shame, but who God made them to be, which is truth.
Ooh. Yes.
So that's, if we're going to think about shame in parenting, and again, we're all human, so we're going to make that mistake, but the goal is to create an environment where the kid becomes who they're supposed to be.
Their true self.
And you won't shame them. Now, there's some other things where, it's you can't drop your pants in the middle of a grocery aisle. But you do it in a way that you cultivate the person, the soul, rather than like the social construct of the kid.
And you do that through having enough courage to have conversations. You do that through having the wherewithal. I think for a lot of it, it's just ignorance, right? Like nobody knows, and then you say that and you go, oh, okay, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Right. So it's having enough education and thought, thinking through this enough to realize, hey, I need to celebrate the good parts of my kid. I need to not try to fit them into a certain mold. I need to understand that there's going to be times where they mess up, and so let's talk about that in a healthy environment, right? And let's put them on the right trajectory, and let's go from there.
Yeah.
Right. All right. I'm going to end this way because I just want this. I want this recorded to whoever my firstborn, because you're about to be born in about 6 months. I'm so excited for you to be here. I love you already. All right.
There it
I
is.
think that's good. All right.
All right.
If you're tired of sifting through flea markets for rare and unique games, we can help. Retro City Games in Henderson, Nevada, only 5 minutes from the Las Vegas Strip, has all your favorite gaming staples, classics, and a wide selection of rare games with new stuff always appearing on our shelves. Come in and chat with Nicole or Doug about your love of games and watch as they help you complete your collection or find your childhood favorite. And don't forget, Retro City Games loves trade-ins. So if you have any Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega, Xbox, PlayStation, or even PC games, come in and visit Retro City Games today. Welcome to the new metropolis of gaming, Retro City Games.
We hope you do listen to us and follow us on all of the social medias. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, like Humannequin Media, follow them. And our Twitter handle is
at WAT_podcast.
And then Humannequin Media.
Yeah, just Humannequin, just at Humannequin Media. That's
all right. And we'd love to hear your comments, your feedback, anything like that. Follow us, give us a shout out. respond to us.
Let us know what you want to hear.
Yeah, let us know what you want to hear. Let us know what you think about this episode. We want to know everybody's feedback. Wherever that takes place, wherever you find us, let us know what you think.
That to us people that can feel things, it hurts.